The sound of the final deadbolt sliding into place with a solid metallic thunk was the most satisfying noise I had heard in 18 years. It echoed through the empty foyer, a definitive period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the front door, my breath fogging the polished surface slightly. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across our manicured lawn, shadows that would soon be filled with the bewildered, angry figures of my family. My family. The word tasted bitter, like old coffee. For nearly 2 decades, this house, this beautiful 5-bedroom colonial with the wraparound porch and the weeping willow in the back, had been my personal theater of war. A war fought not with shouts and blows, but with a slow, corrosive drip of guilt, obligation, and a staggering, soul-crushing sense of entitlement. I was the stage manager, the lighting technician, the janitor, and the understudy for every role they needed filled, all while being treated like an unpaid, permanent intern in the story of their lives. It started, as these things often do, with kindness. When my father passed away suddenly, my mother, Linda, was adrift. Selling her modest home and moving her into our spacious one seemed not just logical, but right. My husband, Ben, had agreed, generous-hearted as always. "It's what family does," he'd said, squeezing my hand. What family does evolved with alarming speed. Within a year, my younger brother, Derek, freshly in between ventures, a phrase that spanned 6 years, and his wife, Chloe, whose primary vocation was cultivating an Instagram aesthetic, temporarily moved into the guest suite. Their 2-bedroom apartment lease was up, the market was brutal, and Mom's loneliness would be assuaged by the pitter-patter of little feet, they argued. They had no children. The temporary stay became permanent. Then, my sister, Amanda, a serial divorcee, began treating the house as a timeshare for herself and her 2 perpetually oversugared children whenever her latest relationship hit the rocks. Which was often. And I, Eleanor, the reliable one, the stable one, the one with a good head on her shoulders, became the de facto CEO of a dysfunctional, non-profit enterprise. I managed the groceries for 7 and often more. I coordinated the labyrinthine cleaning schedules they all ignored. I played referee in petty squabbles over bathroom time and TV remote control. I listened to Mom's criticisms about my childless state, "You and Ben work too much," to Derek's latest can't-miss app idea that required a small loan, to Amanda's tearful dissections of her latest boyfriend's flaws. Ben, my sanctuary, retreated into his work. The quiet understanding in his eyes had slowly been replaced by a weary resignation. Our home was no longer ours. It was a bustling, chaotic boarding house where our marriage occupied the smallest room. The tipping point wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a quiet accretion, a single, final snowflake that triggers the avalanche. It was a Tuesday. I'd come home early from my graphic design job with a migraine, a genuine one, not the excuse I sometimes used for an hour of peace. The house was, miraculously, empty. Blissfully, profoundly silent. I took my medication, drew the blackout curtains in our bedroom, and sank into the merciful dark. I was jolted awake maybe an hour later by the vibration of the floor. Bass thumped from the living room, Derek's motivational workout playlist. Children's shrieks, Amanda's kids, pierced the air, followed by my mother's loud, theatrical sigh from the kitchen, where she would undoubtedly be waiting for to start dinner. Chloe's laughter, sharp and braying, rang out. A symphony of invasion. My head pulsed in time with the bass. But sharper than the migraine was the clean, cold slice of clarity. This was my life. This would always be my life unless I did something unthinkable. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and made a decision. Not in anger, but in a calm, terrifyingly still place deep inside. I was done. The plan formed with crystal precision. I called a locksmith from my bed, whispering the appointment for the following Saturday afternoon when Ben and I would be supposedly attending a house and garden tour in the next town. I contacted a security system company and scheduled an upgrade for the same day. New keypads, new codes, cameras. I opened a new bank account at a different institution. I consulted a lawyer, a discreet, no-nonsense woman who listened without flinching and drew up the necessary paperwork establishing the house as mine and Ben's sole property, a fact my family had conveniently forgotten. Ben was my only fear. When I laid it out for him that night in a hushed conversation at a quiet bar miles from home, his eyes widened. Then, to my shock, they filled with tears of relief. "I thought you'd never ask," he whispered, clutching my hand. "I thought I'd lost you to them forever." The next week was an exercise in surreal normalcy. I cooked their meals. I nodded at their complaints. I fielded Amanda's request for money for a spa weekend to de-stress, and Derek's hint that my car was newer than his. Inside, I was an ice sculpture, cool and solid, waiting for the sun to arrive and melt the old world away. Saturday came. Ben and I left at noon, waving cheerfully. The house and garden tour was a fiction. We spent 3 hours at a cafe, nursing coffees, hands clenched together on the tabletop. My phone buzzed intermittently with updates from the locksmith and the security team. Front door deadbolts replaced. Gate lock upgraded. Security codes changed. New ones emailed to you. All keys voided. At 3:47 p.m., the final text came, "All work complete. Premises secured." We drove home, the car heavy with silence. As we turned onto our street, I saw them. A little cluster of confused humanity on the front porch. My mother, Linda, stood ramrod straight, jabbing at the doorbell as if her finger could transmit her outrage through the wiring. Derek was wrestling with a new heavy-duty lock on the front gate, his face flushed with effort and frustration. Chloe was patting his back, her phone pointed at the scene, probably for a live stream. Amanda's 2 kids were whining, tugging at her sleeves, while she stared at her own key, uselessly jiggling it in the new, unyielding deadbolt. Ben pulled into the driveway, which now required a new remote clicker to access. The gate swung open smoothly for us, then closed. Automatically behind our car with a soft, electric hum. The sound made them all jump and turn. I got out of the car. The late autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. I felt utterly calm. "Eleanor!" my mother shrilled, marching to the gate. "What is the meaning of this? My key doesn't work. This thing on the gate is new." "It is," I said, my voice steady. I walked to the gate, but didn't open it. A new, small keypad with a camera eye glinted between us. "We've upgraded the home security." Derek stormed over. "Upgraded? Without telling us? How are we supposed to get in? I have calls to make." "Your calls," I said, "will not be made from my home office anymore. Or from my house at all." A stunned silence fell, broken only by one of Amanda's kids asking for a juice box. "You're a house," Amanda echoed, her voice thin. "Don't be absurd. This is Mom's house too. Our family home." "No," I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out several envelopes and slid them through the narrow gap in the iron bars of the gate. They fluttered to the ground at their feet. "It is not. Legally, morally, or in any other way. This is the home Ben and I bought. The deed is in our names. The mortgage is paid by us. You have all been guests. Long-term, inconsiderate guests." My mother's face went from red to pale. "Guests? I am your mother. And for 18 years, I have been your housemaid, your cook, your ATM, and your emotional sponge," I replied. The words were sharp, but I said them quietly. "That ends today." Chloe found her voice, sneering. "So what, you're kicking everyone out? Just like that? You're heartless." "The envelopes," I continued, ignoring her, "contain information. For you, Mom, there are details for 3 very nice senior living apartments with openings next month. I've paid the first month's rent as a courtesy. For Derek and Chloe, there is a list of available apartments and the contact for a reputable job agency. For Amanda, the number of a family therapist and a tenant's rights booklet, since your last apartment lease isn't quite up. You have all, consistently, earned enough to support yourselves. You have simply chosen not to, because this was easier." They stared at me, a tableau of utter disbelief. They weren't used to me having a spine. They'd never seen it steel. "You can't do this," Derek shouted, rattling the gate. "I'll call the police." "Please do," Ben said, speaking for the first time. He came to stand beside me, his shoulder touching mine. "The police will see the deed, the legal notices from our attorney that were sent to you all last week, which you likely ignored, and the documentation that you are all legally tenants at will with no lease. They will advise you to remove your belongings, which you have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to do, under our supervision. After that, anything remaining will be considered abandoned property." The lawyer had been very thorough. Amanda began to cry, the messy, performative tears I knew so well. "Where will we go tonight?" I looked at the cluster of them, the entitled, the users, the emotional vampires who had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They were huddled now, not on the porch of a home, but outside a fortress they could no longer enter. "That," I said, finally unlocking the gate with my new fob, but only opening it just enough for Ben and me to slip through, "is no longer my problem." The gate closed, separating us once more. I turned my back on their sputtering protests, their shocked faces, the satisfying image of them queuing up at the gate like bewildered beggars outside a palace that had never been theirs. Ben took my hand. Together, we walked up the path to our front door. I entered the new code, a sequence only we two knew. The lock disengaged with a soft, welcoming click. We stepped inside our quiet, peaceful, empty house, and I closed the door on the old world, listening as that final, solid thunk sealed us into our new beginning.